The rain hammered against the airport terminal windows like bullets against bulletproof glass. I pressed my forehead against the cold pane, watching the water stream down in rivulets that blurred the runway lights into orange smears. My reflection stared back at me. Hollow eyes, tangled hair escaping from a messy bun. Mascara I'd applied 12 hours ago now reduced to dark shadows beneath my lashes. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Lily's small voice cut through the ambient noise of frustrated travelers and departure announcements. I turned to see my 5-year-old daughter rubbing her eyes with tiny fists, her brother Noah slumped against her shoulder, already asleep despite sitting upright in the uncomfortable plastic chair. At 3 years old, he could sleep anywhere. I envied him that. "I know, baby. Just a little longer." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. I'd been saying that for 4 hours now. The departure board mocked me with its flashing red letters. Cancelled. 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 Every flight to Boston, grounded by the storm that had rolled in from nowhere, trapping us in this purgatory of stale coffee and broken dreams. I had $17 left in my wallet, not enough for a hotel, not enough for food beyond maybe one sad sandwich from the vending machine. Not enough for anything except maybe the gas to drive us back to the apartment I'd already surrendered the keys to this morning. My phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus, Lily's father. The man who'd promised forever and delivered abandonment. I didn't open it. I already knew what it would say, some variation of "not my problem anymore," dressed up in slightly more civilized language. He'd made it abundantly clear that his new life in California had no room for the complications of his old one. "Come on, sweetheart." I hoisted my backpack, everything we owned now fit into 2 bags, and reached for Lily's hand. "Let's go wait by the car." The parking garage smelled like exhaust fumes and desperation. Our footsteps echoed against concrete as I navigated toward our ancient Honda Civic, parked in the cheapest long-term lot, because I'd foolishly believed we'd actually make that flight. Noah's weight grew heavier in my arms with each step, his breath warm against my neck, his little fingers clutching the worn fabric of my jacket. I set him down gently in the back seat, buckling him into his booster, while Lily climbed in beside him. The interior light illuminated their faces, so innocent, so trusting. They believed I could fix this. They believed I had a plan. I had nothing. The tears came without warning, hot and fast, blurring my vision as I stood beside the car with the door still open. I pressed my palm against my mouth to muffle the sound, my shoulders shaking with the effort of staying quiet. I couldn't let them see me break. I couldn't let them know how thoroughly I'd failed them. My sister's offer had been our lifeline. A spare room in her Boston apartment. A fresh start away from the memories and mistakes that haunted every corner of this city. But the tickets had consumed my last savings. And now those tickets were worthless pieces of digital confirmation in my email. Refunds that would take 7 to 10 business days to process. We didn't have 7 to 10 days. We had tonight, and nowhere to go. The sound of footsteps approaching barely registered through my breakdown. Expensive footsteps. Leather soles on concrete, measured and confident. Then a voice, low and smooth like aged whiskey, speaking from somewhere behind me. "You're blocking my car." I spun around, swiping frantically at my tears, trying to compose myself. "I'm sorry. I'll move." The words died in my throat. He stood maybe 10 feet away, haloed by the harsh fluorescent lights that somehow made him look like he'd stepped out of a different dimension entirely. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair styled in that effortlessly perfect way that only came from expensive salons and good genetics. His suit probably cost more than my car, a charcoal gray that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. The white shirt beneath it was crisp despite the late hour, unbuttoned just enough at the collar to reveal the column of his throat. But it was his eyes that trapped me. Dark, intense, and currently fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read, not irritation, despite his words. Something else. Something that made my skin prickle with awareness. Behind him stood 2 men, both large enough to block out significant portions of the parking garage. They wore suits, too, though theirs seemed more functional than fashionable. Security. The word whispered through my mind with certainty. The kind of security that only very specific types of people required. I said, "You're blocking my car." He gestured to the sleek black Mercedes parked beside my Civic, so close I hadn't even noticed it. A vehicle that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. Maybe 10. Right. Yes, I'm sorry. I moved toward the driver's side, my hands shaking as I reached for the door handle. My reflection in his car's pristine window showed me exactly how pathetic I looked. Red eyes, tear-stained cheeks, clothes that had been slept in on an airport bench. Wait. I froze, my fingers wrapped around the door handle, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. I didn't turn around, couldn't bring myself to face those penetrating eyes again. His footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. The scent of him reached me first. Expensive cologne layered over something darker, something that spoke of power and danger and things I couldn't name. Then he was beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body despite the cool garage air. Your flight was canceled. Not a question, a statement. I nodded, still not looking at him, focusing instead on the smudged window and my reflection's desperate eyes. Where were you going? Boston. My voice came out barely above a whisper. My sister. She has a place. Had a place for us. A long pause. I could feel his gaze on me, cataloging every detail, every sign of my unraveling life. One of his security guards shifted behind us, the leather of his shoulder holster creaking slightly with the movement. And now? He asked. Now I don't know. The admission escaped before I could stop it. 3 words that contained every failure, every wrong turn, every moment that had led me to breaking down in a parking garage in front of a stranger who looked like he'd never experienced an inconvenience in his entire privileged life. Mommy? Lily's voice drifted from the back seat, small and scared. Who's that man? I finally turned to face him, ready to apologize again and get us away from whatever this situation was becoming. But he wasn't looking at me anymore. His gaze had shifted to the car's interior, to Lily's wide eyes peering through the window, to Noah still sleeping peacefully beside her. Something changed in his expression. A softening around his eyes, a tightening of his jaw, his hands. Beautiful hands with long fingers, and a watch that probably cost more than my car. Flexed at his sides. How old? He asked. 5 and 3. I pulled my jacket tighter around myself, suddenly cold despite the stuffy garage air. Look, we're leaving. I'm sorry we bothered you. You didn't bother me. He reached into his jacket pocket and I tensed, some primal instinct screaming danger. But he only pulled out a phone, sleek and modern, one of several I noticed bulging in various pockets. My flight was canceled too. Weather grounded everything. I didn't know what to say to that, didn't understand why he was still talking to me. He tapped something on his phone screen, held it to his ear. Vincent, the G6. Yes, now. A pause. 2 adults, 2 children. One of the children is asleep. Another pause, his eyes flicking back to me. No, everything stays as planned. Just add the passengers. My stomach dropped. What are you doing? He lowered the phone, sliding it back into his pocket, with the same casual grace he seemed to apply to every movement. Solving your problem. I can't accept. You can. He moved toward the Mercedes, one of his guards immediately stepping forward to open the door. And you will. My pilot has already filed the flight plan. We leave in 30 minutes. My mind reeled. Private jet. He was offering us a ride on his private jet. People like me didn't fly on private jets. People like me counted pennies and prayed that the gas tank would hold enough fumes to get us to the next town. I don't even know you. The words came out stronger than I felt. I'm not getting on a plane with a stranger. He paused, half in and half out of the Mercedes, the interior lights illuminating his profile like something from a classical painting. When he turned back to me, his expression held something that might have been amusement, or might have been something far more dangerous. My name is Dante Caruso. He said it like it should mean something, like I should recognize it. When I continued to stare blankly, he added, and you're going to get in your car and follow my driver to the private terminal. Not because you trust me. You'd be a fool to trust me, but because you're out of options, and because your daughter is hungry, and because whatever you're running from in this city has to be worse than taking help from a stranger. He knew. Somehow he knew I was running. How do I know you're not? I couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the fears that crowded my throat. You don't. He slid into the Mercedes, his guard moving to close the door. But he stopped them with a raised hand, those dark eyes finding mine one last time through the rain-streaked air between us. But your instincts brought you to this parking garage at the exact moment I was walking to my car. Maybe pay attention to where they're leading you now. The door closed with a quiet, expensive click. The Mercedes purred to life, its engine a whisper of power that my Civic could never hope to match. I stood frozen, my mind spinning through possibilities, through risks and rewards, and the weight of 2 children depending on me to make the right choice. Marcus used to say I was too trusting, that I believed in fairy tales. Then he'd proven himself right by walking away from our family with barely a backward glance. But Dante Caruso wasn't offering me a fairy tale. There was nothing soft or magical about the way he looked at me, nothing safe about the men who surrounded him like shadows. This was something else entirely. The second SUV that had been parked nearby rolled forward, stopping beside my car. The passenger window descended, revealing another suited man, older than Dante, with silver threading through his dark hair and scars that spoke of a violent past. Ms., he said, his voice rough like gravel. Mr. Caruso asks that you follow us to the private terminal. Your children will be more comfortable there while we wait for departure. Lily knocked on the window from inside. Mommy? Are we going somewhere? I looked at my daughter's hopeful face, at Noah still sleeping peacefully, at the $17 in my wallet that wouldn't even buy us breakfast. Then I looked at the SUV, at the promise of a solution I didn't deserve and definitely didn't understand. What does Mr. Caruso want in return? I asked. The man in the SUV smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He didn't specify, but men like Mr. Caruso always collect on their debts eventually. A warning. An honest one. I should have walked away. Should have driven to a shelter, begged for help from someone less dangerous. Found another solution that didn't involve mysterious men with private jets and security details that looked like they knew a dozen ways to kill someone with their bare hands. Instead, I heard myself saying, lead the way. The private terminal existed in a different universe than the commercial chaos we'd left behind. Soft lighting replaced harsh fluorescence, plush leather seating instead of plastic chairs bolted to the floor. The air even smelled different, less recycled desperation, more subtle vanilla and new carpet. A woman in an immaculate burgundy uniform appeared the moment we walked through the doors, offering warm towels and beverages like we were guests at a 5-star hotel instead of refugees from a parking garage breakdown. Lily's eyes went wide, her small hand gripping mine tighter. Mommy, is this heaven? No, baby, just somewhere different. I settled into one of the leather chairs, Noah stirring slightly in my arms before burrowing deeper against my chest. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the sleek white jet waiting on the tarmac, its stairs already lowered in invitation or warning. I couldn't quite tell which. Dante stood near the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian that flowed like dark honey. He'd removed his suit jacket, draping it over a nearby chair. And I found myself noticing the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders when he gestured, the way he commanded space without even trying. Every few seconds, his gaze would flick toward us, toward me, before returning to whatever conversation demanded his attention. One of his guards remained by the entrance. The other, the silver-haired man from the SUV who'd introduced himself as Marco, positioned himself near enough to be attentive, but far enough to maintain the illusion of privacy. Miss, can I offer you something to eat? The flight attendant materialized beside me, her smile professional and warm. We have a selection of... Yes. I cut her off, embarrassed by my eagerness but too hungry and too tired to care about pride. Please, anything. I gestured to Lily, who was trying very hard not to stare at the pastries arranged on a nearby console table. She hasn't eaten since this morning. Of course. The woman's smile never wavered, as if desperate single mothers appeared in this terminal regularly. And for you? I'm fine. My stomach growled in protest, but I'd learned to ignore its complaints years ago. She'll have the same. Dante's voice cut across the space, his phone call apparently concluded. He moved toward us with that same fluid grace I'd noticed in the parking garage, every movement economical and purposeful. And something more substantial for the child. Children need proper meals, not just pastries. The attendant nodded and disappeared through a doorway I hadn't noticed before. Dante lowered himself into the chair across from mine, his long legs extending into the space between us. Too close, and yet somehow maintaining that invisible barrier of power and distance. "You don't have to do this," I said, hating how small my voice sounded in the hushed terminal. "I'm aware." He leaned back, one arm draped across the chair's rest, the picture of casual wealth and controlled danger, and yet I am. Why? His eyes, God, those eyes, fixed on mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Does it matter? Yes. I shifted Noah's weight, using my son as a shield against that penetrating stare. People like you don't help people like me without a reason. People like me. He repeated the words slowly, almost tasting them. What do you think you know about people like me? Enough to recognize danger when I see it. The boldness surprised even me, but something about his presence demanded honesty. Lying to Dante Caruso felt like it would be both pointless and potentially fatal. A smile ghosted across his lips. There and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Smart. Your instincts are better than I initially thought. Then tell me why. I pressed, even as part of me screamed to just accept the gift and stop questioning. Why are you helping us? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the window, to the jet waiting in the darkness beyond. Rain still hammered against the glass, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the tension stretching between us. I had a sister, he finally said, his voice softer than before but no less commanding. She was 19 when she got pregnant. The father disappeared before the child was born. My family... He paused, something dark flickering across his features. They had opinions about what she should do. She ran. Took nothing but a backpack and dreams of a better life somewhere far from our influence. My heart constricted. What happened to her? She died when her son was 2 years old. Exhaustion, malnutrition, an infection that proper medical care could have prevented. His fingers drummed once against the armrest, a single gesture of controlled violence. I found them 3 days after she passed. The boy was trying to wake her up. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, hollow against the weight of his story. Don't be sorry. His eyes snapped back to mine, and there it was again. That intensity that felt like being caught in a spotlight. Be grateful that I happened to be walking to my car at the exact moment you were breaking down next to it. Be grateful that your daughter has your eyes, and that your son is the same age my nephew was when I found him. Be grateful that something in this universe aligned to put you in my path. The flight attendant returned with a tray laden with food, sandwiches and fruit and pastries that made Lily gasp with delight. I watched my daughter eat with the single-minded focus of the truly hungry, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Where is he now? I asked quietly. Your nephew? Safe. Protected. Educated. Dante's expression softened fractionally. Loved, as he should have been from the beginning. The implication hung heavy in the air between us. He saved his nephew. Now he was saving us. I can't repay you, I whispered. Whatever this costs, the flight, the fuel, your time, I have nothing. I didn't ask for payment. Men always want something. I'm not most men. He stood abruptly, buttoning his shirt cuff in a gesture so casual it felt rehearsed. Finish eating. We board in 10 minutes. He walked away before I could respond, pulling out one of his phones and disappearing into a private office off the main terminal. Marco shifted slightly, his presence a reminder that we were surrounded, protected, or trapped. The distinction remained unclear. Lily tugged on my sleeve, strawberry jam smeared across her chin. Mommy, I like the nice man. We don't know him, sweetheart, but he's helping us. Her child's logic, so simple and pure. That makes him nice, right? I didn't have an answer for that. Instead, I cleaned her face with one of the warm towels and tried to calm the storm of anxiety swirling in my gut. Every instinct I possessed screamed contradictions. Danger and safety, threat and salvation, predator and protector all wrapped up in expensive suits and controlled violence. The boarding call came too soon. Marco appeared at my side, his scarred hand surprisingly gentle as he reached for my backpack. "Allow me, Ms. Sullivan." I froze. "I never told you my name." His expression didn't change. "Mr. Caruso is thorough in his research." "How did he—" "Your car registration was visible through the window. A simple license plate check provided the rest." Marco shouldered my bag like it weighed nothing. "Don't be alarmed. It's simply his nature to know everything about situations he involves himself in. Everything." The word echoed in my head as I carried Noah toward the jet, Lily's hand in mine. What else did Dante Caruso know about me? My failed marriage? My eviction? The mountain of debt that had driven us to flee across state lines in search of my sister's charity? The jet's interior made the terminal look modest. Cream leather seats that probably cost more than my entire apartment's worth of furniture, polished wood accents, soft lighting that somehow made everyone look better, more rested, more human. Dante sat near the back, laptop open, his attention focused on whatever business required immediate attention even at this hour. The attendant, a different one this time, equally polished, guided us to seats near the front. "You and your daughter here, and we've prepared a small bed area for your son if you'd like him to continue sleeping comfortably." A bed. On an airplane. I nodded numbly, following her to where they'd somehow transformed a section of seats into a flat surface with pillows and blankets that looked softer than anything we'd owned. Noah didn't even wake as I laid him down, tucking the blanket around his small body with shaking hands. "Mommy, can I sit by the window?" Lily's excitement cut through my daze. "Yes, baby, of course." The engines hummed to life, a sound so smooth and quiet it barely registered. Nothing like the commercial flights I'd experienced, where every mechanical noise felt like a potential disaster. This was power-contained, luxury weaponized into something that defied gravity with barely a whisper of effort. We were taxiing before I realized I'd never sat down properly, still half standing in the aisle. My hand braced against the seat back. Dante appeared beside me, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the confined space. "Sit," he commanded softly, "before you fall." "I'm fine." His hand closed around my elbow, firm but not painful, guiding me into the seat beside Lily. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm, a sensation I had no business feeling toward a man who was essentially a beautifully wrapped question mark. He crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with Lily. "What's your name, little one?" "Lily." She smiled at him, fearless in the way only children could be. "I'm 5 3/4. That's my brother Noah. He's 3, but he acts like a baby sometimes. Brothers often do." The corner of Dante's mouth quirked upward, something almost human breaking through his controlled exterior. "Have you ever flown before, Lily?" She shook her head, blonde curls bouncing. "Then you're in for something special." He reached into his pocket, producing a small box I hadn't noticed before. "These are special flying headphones. They make the engine sound like music. Would you like them?" Lily looked at me for permission. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He'd prepared for this. Somehow, in the brief time between the parking garage and now, he'd thought to get something for my daughter. As Lily examined her new treasure, Dante straightened, his attention shifting back to me. We were ascending now, the ground falling away beneath us, the lights of the city spreading out like scattered diamonds in the darkness. "Thank you," I managed. "For all of this. Don't thank me yet." His expression turned serious, all traces of softness vanishing. "We need to establish some things before we land in Boston." My stomach nodded. "Here it comes. The payment, the catch, the reason behind the generosity. Your ex-husband," he continued, his voice low enough that Lily wouldn't hear over her new headphones. "Marcus Sullivan. He owes money to some very dangerous people." The blood drained from my face. "How do you—" "I know everything, Emma." My name on his lips felt intimate and threatening all at once. "I know he gambled away your savings. I know he took out loans using your information as collateral. I know he fled to California 3 months ago, leaving you to handle the fallout from his mistakes." I didn't know about the loans. The words tumbled out in a rush. I swear, I had no idea until the men came to the apartment. "I believe you." He cut me off, his hand rising in a gesture that demanded silence. "The men who came to your apartment work for a friend of mine." Well, associate would be more accurate. I made some calls while you were eating. The debt has been transferred. I blinked, trying to process his words through the fog of exhaustion and fear. Transferred? What does that mean? It means Marcus no longer owes them money. Dante's gaze held mine, unblinking. He owes me. And by extension, so do you. There it was. The trap I'd sensed from the beginning, sprung with the efficiency of a predator who'd been patient enough to let his prey believe in safety first. How much? My voice barely worked. $63,000. He said it like it was nothing, like people carried that kind of debt around like loose change. Plus interest accruing at 15% annually. The number crushed the air from my lungs. I'd never see that kind of money in my lifetime, let alone be able to repay it. I can't, I started. You can't pay it back. I'm aware. He straightened, his height suddenly oppressive in the cabin. But you can work it off. Work. The word carried implications that made my skin crawl. I'd heard stories, whispered warnings about women who owed money to dangerous men, about the kind of work they were forced to do to settle debts. I couldn't say it. Couldn't voice the fear clawing at my throat. Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes. I'm not that kind of man, Emma. Whatever you're thinking, stop. Then what kind of work? I demanded, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Lily glanced over, her small brow furrowed with concern. I forced a smile, shooing her back to her window view. My nephew, Sandro, is 8 years old now. Brilliant, creative, far too smart for his own good. But he's struggled since. Dante paused, his jaw tightening. He's struggled. He needs stability, structure, someone who understands what it means to build a life from nothing. You want me to be his nanny, disbelief colored my words. I want you to be his family. The correction came sharp and immediate. Someone who will care about his well-being beyond a paycheck. Someone who knows what it means to fight for the people you love. I stared at him, searching for the trick, the hidden blade in his offer. And that settles the debt? That begins to settle the debt. Room and board will be provided. A salary appropriate for someone with your limited experience. We'll establish a payment plan that accounts for your children's needs. His expression softened fractionally. They'll want for nothing, Emma. Education, healthcare, safety, all provided. All I ask in return is that you give Sandro what my sister couldn't give him before she died. A chance at normal. Normal. The word sounded absurd coming from a man who traveled with armed guards and made $60,000 debts disappear with a phone call. And if I say no? Then I'll land this plane in Boston as promised, have my driver take you to your sister's apartment, and you'll never see me again. He moved toward his seat, then paused. But the debt will remain, and the men Marcus angered aren't as understanding as I am about payment schedules. A threat wrapped in silk. I should have felt angry, manipulated, trapped. Instead, I felt something far more dangerous, relief. Because he was right. I was out of options. And he was offering us a cage with golden bars, which was still better than the street. How long? I asked. Until the debt is paid. 3 years, perhaps 4, depending on the payment structure we agree upon. 3 years of my life, sold for my children's safety and my ex-husband's mistakes. I'll need to call my sister, I said quietly. Tell her we won't be coming. Dante nodded once, a king accepting tribute. We land in an hour. You can call her from the car. He returned to his seat, his attention immediately absorbed by his laptop screen, as if our entire conversation had been nothing more than a routine business transaction. Maybe for him it was. Lily pressed her face against the window, watching clouds drift past in the darkness. Noah slept peacefully in his makeshift bed, unaware that his mother had just traded one form of captivity for another. I closed my eyes and tried to remember what freedom felt like. Boston's skyline glittered through the pre-dawn darkness as we descended. A constellation of lights that had represented hope just hours ago. Now it looked different through the jet's window. Distant, unreachable, a future that had slipped through my fingers before I'd even touched it. The landing was so smooth I barely felt it. Just a gentle settling, as the wheels kissed the tarmac with the kind of grace that only obscene amounts of money could buy. Lily had fallen asleep against my shoulder somewhere over Connecticut. Her new headphones still perched on her blonde head, her breathing soft and steady. I envied her that peace. that ability to trust that the adults around her would handle everything. I'd lost that confidence somewhere between Marcus's abandonment and the eviction notice taped to our door. The engines powered down to a whisper. Dante closed his laptop with a decisive click, his movements economical as he gathered his jacket and the various phones that seemed to multiply in his pockets. Marco appeared from somewhere near the cockpit, speaking in low Italian that I couldn't understand but recognized as a report of some kind. Dante's expression never changed, just a slight nod of acknowledgement before Marco disappeared again. Emma. My name drew my attention back to him. He stood in the aisle, jacket draped over one arm, looking impossibly put together despite the late hour. The car is waiting. We'll take you to the house now. Your sister can wait until morning for explanations. I should call her tonight, I protested weakly. She'll worry. It's 4 a.m. You'll wake her, alarm her, and accomplish nothing except adding to your exhaustion. He wasn't asking. The words were shaped like concern, but the tone made it clear this was a decision already made. You need rest. The children need rest. Everything else can wait. I wanted to argue, to assert some illusion of control over my rapidly narrowing life. But he was right. I was so tired my bones ached. And the thought of explaining this impossible situation to my sister right now felt insurmountable. The car waiting on the tarmac made the Mercedes from the airport look modest. A black SUV with windows tinted so dark they seemed to swallow light, flanked by an identical vehicle that held more of Dante's ever-present security. Marco held the door open, his scarred face impassive as I carried Noah's sleeping form toward the vehicle. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Gun oil, maybe, though I couldn't be sure. Dante slid in beside me, his presence filling the spacious cabin despite all the room available. Lily climbed in on my other side, immediately curling into my lap alongside her brother, creating a barrier of children between me and the man who now owned my debt, my future, my choices. The drive through Boston's empty streets felt surreal. I watched the city slide past through tinted windows, historic brownstones giving way to increasingly expensive neighborhoods. The kind where people like me only existed as hired help. Trees lined perfectly manicured sidewalks. Gas lamps flickered in the pre-dawn darkness. Anachronistic touches that screamed old money and older power. Where exactly are we going? I asked, breaking the silence that had stretched since leaving the airport. Beacon Hill. Dante's attention remained fixed on his phone screen, his thumbs moving with practiced efficiency across the keyboard. The house has been in my family for 3 generations. You'll find it comfortable. Comfortable. The understatement of the century, I'd learn. The SUV turned onto a street that looked like it belonged in a period film. Cobblestones, wrought iron fences, brick facades that whispered of Revolution-era secrets. We stopped before a townhouse that somehow managed to be both understated and magnificent. 4 stories of red brick and black shutters, with window boxes that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. Marco opened the door, and the early morning air hit me with surprising warmth for November. Indian summer, they called it, this last gasp of mild weather before winter's teeth closed around the city. I stepped onto the sidewalk, my worn sneakers looking obscene against the pristine cobblestones. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair pulled into an elegant twist. She wore a cardigan over a simple dress, but everything about her posture screamed authority and competence. Mr. Caruso. She nodded respectfully, her accent carrying hints of Italian vowels. Welcome home, Teresa. Dante's voice warmed fractionally, the first genuine softness I'd heard from him. This is Emma Sullivan and her children, Lily and Noah. They'll be staying with us. Please prepare the guest suite on the 3rd floor, the one with the adjoining room for the children. Teresa's gaze swept over us with practiced efficiency, cataloging our rumpled clothes and exhausted faces without a hint of judgment. Of course. I'll have fresh linens and towels sent up immediately. Shall I prepare breakfast? In a few hours. They need sleep first. Dante moved past her into the house, his security detail peeling off to various posts with the coordination of a well-rehearsed ballet. I hesitated on the threshold, struck by the sudden weight of crossing into this new life. Once I stepped through this door, everything changed. No more pretending this was temporary. No more illusions about having options. Mommy? Lily stirred against my shoulder. Are we home? The question broke something inside me. No, baby. But we're safe. That's what matters. I stepped inside. The interior stole what little breath I had left. Hardwood floors that gleamed like dark honey. A staircase that curved upward with the kind of craftsmanship that didn't exist anymore. Walls lined with art that I suspected wasn't prints. Everything spoke of wealth so old and established, it didn't need to announce itself. Teresa guided us up the stairs, past the second floor where I caught glimpses of what looked like formal rooms, a library, a dining room with a table that could seat 20. The third floor was quieter, more intimate, with hallway runners that muffled our footsteps and sconces that cast warm pools of light. Here. She opened double doors to reveal a suite that was larger than my entire apartment had been. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in linens that looked like they'd been spun from clouds. Windows overlooked a private garden behind the house, though darkness obscured the details. An adjoining door stood open, revealing a smaller room with 2 twin beds already made up, stuffed animals positioned on the pillows like they'd been waiting for new children to love them. The bathroom is through there. Teresa pointed to another door. Fresh towels are in the cabinet. If you need anything at all, press 9 on the house phone. Someone will answer immediately. Thank you, I managed, my voice hoarse. She smiled, the expression transforming her severe features into something almost motherly. You're welcome, dear. Try to rest. Things always look better after sleep. She left, closing the door behind her with a soft click that somehow felt final. I stood in the center of the room, Noah heavy in my arms, Lily clinging to my leg, and tried to process the fact that this was real. This impossible, terrifying, beautiful cage was now our home. Come on, sweetheart. I carried Noah into the children's room, laying him on one of the beds. He didn't stir, lost in whatever dreams 3-year-olds had. Lily climbed onto the other bed, her eyes already drooping despite her earlier nap on the plane. Mommy, will we stay here long? She asked as I tucked her in. I don't know, baby. The honest answer. The only one I could give. But we're together. That's what counts. I like the nice man. Her eyes closed, words slurring with encroaching sleep. He has sad eyes. Like you. I kissed her forehead, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. One of the few luxuries I'd maintained despite everything. Sleep now. We'll figure everything out tomorrow. Back in my own room, I stood at the window and watched dawn break over the garden below. Carefully manicured paths wound between flower beds that were probably spectacular in summer. A fountain sat silent in the center, its stone cherubs frozen mid-laugh. Everything perfect. Everything controlled. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I turned, expecting Teresa, but found Dante instead. He'd changed into dark slacks and a simple black shirt, the casual clothes somehow making him look more dangerous than the suit had. His hair was slightly damp, suggesting a recent shower, and the scent of his soap, something cedar and masculine, preceded him into the room. You should be sleeping, he said, but made no move to leave. So should you. I don't sleep much. He moved to the window, standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Insomnia is an occupational hazard. What exactly is your occupation? The question came out before I could stop it. Besides apparently rescuing desperate women in parking garages and collecting their debts. His lips quirked, almost a smile. I'm in import-export, international trade. Very boring, very lucrative. Boring businesses don't usually require armed security. Smart businesses always require security. The world is full of people who want what doesn't belong to them. He turned to face me, and in the growing light I could see details I'd missed before, a scar along his jawline, faint but present. Shadows under his eyes that suggested Teresa wasn't the only insomniac in the house. Speaking of which, we need to establish some ground rules. My stomach clenched. Rules. The house is safe, but only if you stay within its boundaries. His voice dropped, taking on an edge that made the hair on my neck rise. You don't leave without security. You don't speak to anyone about my business. You don't answer questions about what happens in this house or who comes and goes. Understood? Am I a prisoner? You're protected. The correction came sharp. There's a difference. Is there? I challenged, surprising myself with the boldness, because from where I'm standing, it looks the same. Something flickered in his eyes, respect, maybe, or recognition. A prisoner has no choices, Emma. You chose to get on that plane. You chose to come here. You can choose to leave any time you want. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. But if you leave, you're on your own. The debt remains. The danger remains. And I won't be there to keep the wolves away from your door. Why do you care? The question burst out, raw and desperate. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why go through all this trouble for a stranger? For a long moment, he just looked at me, his dark eyes searching my face for something I couldn't name. Then his hand rose, slowly, giving me time to pull away. His fingers brushed my cheek, the touch feather-light but burning like a brand. Because when I saw you in that parking garage, crying over your children with nowhere to go, I saw my sister. His thumb traced the curve of my cheekbone, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but feel. And I remembered that I was too late to save her. But I'm not too late for you. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they terrified me. Because they carried the weight of obsession, of a man who'd decided I was his second chance at redemption, whether I wanted that responsibility or not. Dante, I started, but didn't know how to finish. Sleep, Emma. He dropped his hand, stepping back and leaving me cold where his warmth had been. Tomorrow you'll meet Sandro. Tomorrow your real work begins. Tonight, just rest. He was at the door before I found my voice again. What if I can't do this? The confession escaped in a whisper. What if I'm not what he needs? Dante paused, his hand on the doorframe, his profile sharp in the dawn light. You're a mother who would do anything for her children. That's exactly what Sandro needs. He looked back at me one last time, and the intensity in his gaze made my knees weak. And for some reason I don't fully understand yet, it's what I need too. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the sunrise, and the creeping realization that I'd just entered into something far more complicated than a simple work arrangement. Dante Caruso didn't just want a nanny for his nephew. He wanted something from me that I wasn't sure I knew how to give. I crawled into the impossibly soft bed still fully clothed, too exhausted to even remove my shoes. The last thought before sleep claimed me was that somewhere in this beautiful house slept a boy who'd lost his mother, cared for by an uncle who collected broken things and tried to mend them with money and control. And now I was one of those broken things, carefully placed on a shelf in a golden cage, owned by a man whose kindness felt like a noose slowly tightening around my throat. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, panic spiking through my chest before memory crashed back. The townhouse. Dante. The debt that now defined my existence. I bolted upright, my heart hammering as I registered the silence. Too quiet. Where were the children? I launched myself out of bed, stumbling toward the adjoining room with my pulse roaring in my ears. Empty. Both beds neatly made, the stuffed animals arranged with care that my children had never demonstrated in their entire lives. Fear clawed at my throat as I yanked open the door to the hallway. Lily? Noah? My voice came out strangled, too loud in the hushed elegance of the house. They're downstairs, Ms. Sullivan. Teresa appeared at the top of the staircase, her expression calm and reassuring, having breakfast with Sandro in the kitchen. They've been up for an hour, happy as clams. The relief made my knees weak. You should have woken me. Mr. Caruso's orders were to let you sleep. She gestured for me to follow her. Come, you should eat something. And perhaps change first? There are clothes in the closet. I took the liberty of estimating your size. I glanced down at my wrinkled jeans and yesterday's shirt, suddenly aware of how I must look. You didn't have to. It's my job, dear. Teresa's smile was kind, but firm. And Mr. Caruso is very particular about presentation. Not for vanity's sake, but for safety. People notice things in this neighborhood. It's better if you look like you belong. The closet revealed an array of clothes that probably cost more than everything I'd owned combined. Simple but expensive. Designer jeans that actually fit. Soft sweaters in muted colors, practical shoes that would support my feet instead of destroying them. I chose quickly, feeling strange in fabric that didn't come from discount stores, then followed Teresa downstairs. The kitchen existed in stark contrast to the formal elegance of the rest of the house. Here, warmth radiated from every corner, copper pots hanging over a massive island, windows overlooking the garden, and the scent of fresh coffee and something baking that made my stomach clench with hunger. At the table sat my children alongside a dark-haired boy who could only be Alessandro. "Mommy," Lily's face lit up. "Sandro taught us how to say good morning in Italian. It's buongiorno." "Buongiorno," I repeated, my gaze moving to the boy. He was beautiful in that delicate way some children were before adolescence, all sharp angles and serious dark eyes that held too much knowledge for 8 years old. He watched me with an intensity that reminded me uncomfortably of his uncle. "You're Emma." He said it like a statement, not a question, his English perfect, but accented. "Uncle Dante said you're going to help take care of me." "That's right." I moved to the table, accepting the coffee Teresa pressed into my hands like a lifeline. "If that's okay with you." Alessandro shrugged, the gesture painfully adult. "I've had 7 nannies since Mama died. They all leave eventually. Uncle Dante gets angry and fires them, or they get scared and quit." The casual delivery of that information sent ice through my veins. 7 nannies. I didn't ask what Dante had gotten angry about. Didn't want to know what had scared the others away. "Well, I'm not going anywhere," I said, surprised by the conviction in my voice. "My children and I are staying here, which means we're all going to figure out how to live together." Something flickered in Alessandro's eyes. Hope, maybe, or the ghost of it. "Your kids are nice. Noah let me share his dinosaur, even though he just met me." I glanced at my son, happily munching on what looked like French toast cut into perfect triangles. "Noah's good at sharing, sometimes too good. Uncle Dante says sharing is weakness unless you're sharing with family." Alessandro spoke with the certainty of a child repeating learned doctrine. "But he also says family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay." The words hit harder than they should have. I wondered what Dante had told the boy about us, about why we were here. Did Alessandro know about the debt? Did he understand that I'd been purchased like a commodity to fill a void in his life? "Where is your uncle?" I asked Teresa, who was placing a plate of food in front of me with maternal efficiency. "Business meeting in the city. He'll return this afternoon." She refilled my coffee without asking. "He left instructions for you to spend the day settling in, getting to know Sandro, familiarizing yourself with the house and grounds. In other words, learning the boundaries of my cage." The morning passed in a strange domesticity that felt like playing house in someone else's life. Alessandro proved to be a solemn, intelligent child who spoke 3 languages and could discuss art history with the ease of someone twice his age. But underneath that sophisticated veneer, I caught glimpses of the 8-year-old boy he should have been. The way he lit up when Lily asked him to play pirates. The careful way he showed Noah his collection of model cars, as if afraid they might break or be taken away. "My mama used to play pirates with me," he said quietly, as we watched Lily direct an elaborate game involving pillows and imagination. "Before she got sick, she'd be the captured princess, and I'd rescue her. I'm sorry you lost her." I sat beside him on the floor, our backs against an expensive sofa I was terrified the children would destroy. "That must have been really hard. Uncle Dante says men don't cry about hard things. They just get stronger." But his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Do you think that's true? I think sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let yourself feel sad." I reached over, hesitating before placing my hand over his smaller one. "And I think your mama would want you to remember her with love, not just strength." Alessandro's fingers curled around mine, holding on like I was an anchor in turbulent water. We sat like that for a long time, watching the children play, 2 people bound by loss and the man who decided to collect us both. Lunch came and went. Teresa showed me the security system. Cameras everywhere, motion sensors on every door and window, panic buttons hidden in strategic locations throughout the house. "For your protection," she kept saying. But I heard what she didn't say, for our containment. Mr. Caruso takes safety very seriously, she explained, as we stood in what she called the monitor room on the second floor, a space filled with screens showing every angle of the house and grounds. After what happened to his sister, he won't risk losing anyone else. What exactly happened to her? I ventured, hoping Teresa's earlier kindness might extend to answers. Her expression shuddered. That's not my story to tell, but I'll say this. Dante Caruso is a complicated man who's seen too much darkness. He protects what's his with everything he has. Sometimes that protection feels suffocating, but it comes from a place of love, even if he doesn't always show it conventionally. Before I could press for more, voices drifted up from the ground floor. Male voices, speaking rapid Italian, the tones clipped and tense. Teresa's posture straightened immediately. He's home early. She moved toward the stairs. With guests. You should stay up here with the children until... Teresa. Dante's voice cut through the house like a blade. Bring Emma to my office, now. The command in those words made my stomach drop. Teresa's face remained neutral, but I saw the flash of concern in her eyes. Come. Leave the children with Maria. She's the housekeeper. They'll be safe. Safe from what? I wanted to ask, but didn't. Instead, I followed Teresa down to the second floor, past the library to a set of heavy wooden doors I hadn't noticed during the earlier tour. She knocked once, waited for acknowledgement, then pushed them open. Dante's office matched the man. Dark wood, leather, and an underlying current of barely contained violence. He stood behind a massive desk, still in his suit from whatever meeting he'd attended, his tie loosened and his expression carved from granite. Two men flanked him, both wearing the same professionally dangerous look as Marco, and seated in one of the chairs facing the desk was a man I'd hoped never to see again. Marcus. My ex-husband looked terrible. Thinner than I remembered, with circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that manifested in constantly bouncing his leg. When he saw me, something like relief flooded his features. Emma, thank God. Tell them I didn't know about the money. Tell them it was a mistake. Quiet. Dante didn't raise his voice, but Marcus fell silent immediately, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Those dark eyes fixed on me, and I saw something burning there that made my breath catch. Emma, come here. It wasn't a request. I moved around the desk on unsteady legs, hyper-aware of Marcus watching, of the security guards positioned like statues, of the power dynamic playing out in this room like a chess game where I didn't know the rules. Dante's hand closed around my wrist when I got close enough, his grip firm, but not painful, pulling me to stand beside him, a clear statement of ownership that made Marcus's face flush red. Mr. Sullivan has been explaining his financial difficulties, Dante said conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than the debt that had upended my life. He seems to believe that because you're his ex-wife, his debts aren't your responsibility. They're not, I managed, my voice barely steady. We're divorced. His choices have nothing to do with me. Except he used your social security number to secure several of the loans. Dante's thumb traced a circle on the inside of my wrist, the touch proprietary and deliberate. Which makes you legally liable, which is why the collection agencies were visiting your apartment, why you were running. Marcus leaned forward, desperation painting his features. I'll pay it back. Just give me time. You had time. 3 months of it, during which you hid in California and ignored every attempt at contact. Dante's expression never changed, but something cold crept into his voice. And now you returned to Boston because you heard through certain channels that I'd acquired your debt. You came here hoping to negotiate directly. I have rights. Marcus started. You have nothing. The words came quiet, but absolute. Emma, however, has a contract with me. A legal, binding agreement that specifies exactly how this debt will be repaid. Would you like to tell your ex-husband how you're settling his mistakes? The question was a test. I could feel it, could sense the weight of whatever answer I gave would determine something important. Marcus stared at me, confusion and growing anger warring on his features. I'm working for Mr. Caruso, I said carefully. taking care of his nephew, living here with our children. The debt will be paid off through my salary and services over the next several years. Living here? Marcus's voice climbed toward hysteria. Emma, do you have any idea who this man is? What he does? Careful. The warning from Dante carried the weight of a blade against skin. You're in my house, Mr. Sullivan. Mind how you speak about me to my employee. Employee. The word stung more than it should have. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. You can't keep her here like some kind of... Finish that sentence, Dante invited, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Please, I'd love to hear what you think I'm keeping her like. The security guard shifted slightly, a synchronized movement that spoke of readiness. Marcus noticed, his bravado crumbling as quickly as it had risen. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he realized the truth. That I'd chosen this, that I'd walked into this cage willingly, because he'd left me no other option. Emma? His voice cracked. Come with me. We'll figure something else out. I'll get a job, pay it back properly. You don't have to do this. Where were those promises 3 months ago? The question came out harsher than intended. Where were you when the men came to our apartment? When Lily asked why Daddy didn't call anymore? When I had to choose between groceries and electricity? I was scared. So was I. I pulled away from Dante's grip, needing space, needing to breathe. But I didn't run. I didn't abandon our children. I didn't steal from people who could destroy us, and then disappear. You did that, Marcus. You made these choices. Now I'm dealing with the consequences the only way I know how, by selling yourself to a mobster? He spat the words like accusations. The room went very still. I felt rather than saw Dante's fury, saw the way his men tensed, ready for an order that would probably result in Marcus leaving this office in a body bag. He's not... I started, but Dante's voice cut across mine. Get him out. The command came cold and final. And make sure Mr. Sullivan understands that his continued health depends on his silence about this family's business. If I hear even a whisper that he's been talking about Emma, about the children, about anything that happens in this house, there won't be enough left of him to identify. The guards moved with efficient brutality, hauling Marcus toward the door despite his protests. He twisted back to look at me one last time, his face a mask of betrayal and fear. Emma, please. The door closed on his plea, leaving me alone with Dante in a silence so thick I could barely breathe through it. I turned to face him, my hands shaking with adrenaline and anger and something else I couldn't name. You didn't have to threaten him like that, I said. Yes, I did. Dante moved around the desk with predatory grace, closing the distance between us until I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. He needed to understand that you're under my protection now. That touching you, speaking about you, even thinking about you, requires my permission. I'm not your property. Aren't you? His hand rose to cup my jaw, the touch possessive and surprisingly gentle. You live in my house. Wear clothes I provided. Eat food I pay for. Care for my nephew under a contract that binds you to me for years. If that's not ownership, Emma, what would you call it? A job. But the word came out weak, unconvincing even to my own ears. Liar. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I hated how my body responded, how heat pooled low in my stomach despite everything. You know what this is. You've known since the parking garage. I saw it in your eyes when you looked at me. Recognition. Understanding. You knew I was dangerous, and you got on that plane anyway. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin, his scent overwhelming my senses. You chose to trust me with your children's lives. You chose to stand beside me just now instead of running to your ex-husband. You choose to stay in this house every moment you don't walk out that door. So don't lie to me about choices, Emma. Own the ones you've made. The truth in his words cut deeper than any threat could have, because he was right. Some part of me had recognized him in that parking garage, had seen the darkness in him, and hadn't flinched, had understood instinctively that this man would burn the world down before letting harm touch what he'd claimed as his, and I'd let him claim me. What do you want from me? the whisper escaped before I could stop it. Really want? Dante's eyes searched mine, something raw and unguarded flickering in their depths before his control reasserted itself. I want you to take care of Sandro, to give him the childhood my sister couldn't provide, to be present and patient in everything he needs. His hand slid from my jaw to curl around the back of my neck, holding me captive without force. And I want you to stop looking at me like I'm a monster when we both know you're not afraid of me at all. Maybe I should be, I breathed. Maybe. His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile, but you're not. And that, Emma Sullivan, is going to be a problem for both of us. He released me abruptly, stepping back and leaving me cold. Go check on the children. Dinner is at 7. We eat together as a family. Don't be late. I fled his office on shaking legs, my heart racing and my mind reeling. Behind me, I heard him speaking in Italian to his men, his voice once again cold and controlled, as if the moment between us had never happened. But it had. And as I climbed the stairs toward the sounds of my children's laughter, I knew with sick certainty that everything had just become infinitely more complicated. 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of domesticity and danger, each day bleeding into the next, until I could barely remember the woman I'd been in that airport parking garage. The children adapted with the resilience only kids possessed. Lily flourished in the private school Dante enrolled her in, coming home each day with stories about art class and new friends whose parents probably owned half of Boston. Noah clung to me less, his shyness melting under Alessandro's patient attention and Teresa's endless supply of cookies. And Sandro. Alessandro became the center of my days, this solemn child who carried grief like a winter coat he couldn't take off. We fell into routines, morning lessons at the kitchen table, afternoons in the garden when weather permitted, evenings reading together in the library while Dante worked behind closed doors. Slowly, carefully, I watched the boy beneath the sophisticated mask emerge. He laughed at Lily's terrible jokes. He taught Noah to count in Italian. He asked me questions about my life before, seeming genuinely interested in stories about scraped knees and grocery store struggles. But it was Dante who haunted my thoughts in the dark hours when sleep wouldn't come. He was everywhere and nowhere, a constant presence that manifested in subtle ways. Fresh flowers appearing in my room each morning. Coffee made exactly how I liked it before I came downstairs. The way Alessandro's eyes would light up when his uncle returned from whatever business kept him away for long stretches. The sound of his voice drifting through walls late at night, speaking in Italian that sounded like prayers or curses. I could never quite tell which. We had dinner together every night he was home, sitting at that massive table like a family playing at normalcy. He'd ask about my day, about Sandro's progress, about whether I needed anything. His attention felt like standing too close to a fire, warming and dangerous all at once. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with an intensity that made my skin flush, his dark eyes tracking every movement, every expression, like he was memorizing me. The guards rotated but never disappeared. Marco became a familiar presence, his scarred face softening whenever the children were around. The security cameras watched everything. The panic buttons remained within reach. The house was a fortress, and I was both protected and imprisoned within its walls. I should have hated it, should have felt suffocated by the control, the constant surveillance, the way Dante orchestrated every aspect of our lives with invisible strings. But instead, I felt something far more dangerous, safe. For the first time since Marcus left, I slept through the night without worrying about bills or evictions, or men who came collecting debts in the darkness. And that safety came with a price I was only beginning to understand. It was a Tuesday evening when everything shifted. Dante had been gone for 4 days. Some business in New York that he'd explained with careful vagueness, and the house felt different without him. Like a stage missing its lead actor. The children and I were in the library, Noah asleep in my lap while Lily and Alessandro built an elaborate fort from couch cushions, when I heard the front door open, male voices, speaking in rapid Italian, then footsteps on the stairs, quick and urgent. Teresa appeared in the doorway, her usual calm cracked by something like worry. "Emma, take the children upstairs. Now." The command in her voice activated every protective instinct I possessed. "What's wrong?" "Please, just go." She was already moving toward us, her hands reaching for Noah. "Lock yourselves in your room. Don't come out until someone you trust tells you it's safe. Mommy?" Lily's voice went small and scared, the way it used to sound when Marcus and I would fight late at night. I gathered Noah from Teresa's arms, my heart hammering. "Come on, babies. We're going upstairs to play a game." Alessandro stood frozen, his face pale. "Uncle Dante?" "He's fine," Teresa assured him, but her eyes said otherwise. "Go with Emma. Take care of the little ones." We fled upstairs, my mind racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. In my room, I locked the door and pulled the children onto the bed, wrapping them in blankets and my arms like I could shield them from whatever was happening downstairs. "Is it like before?" Alessandro whispered against my shoulder. When the bad men came, my blood went cold. What bad men? The ones who tried to hurt Uncle Dante. 6 months ago. They came to the house at night. There was shooting. Mama Maria, the old housekeeper, she got scared and quit the next day. His small body trembled. That's when Uncle Dante got more guards, more cameras. That's when he started being really careful about who could come inside. I held him tighter, my mind reeling. Shooting. Violence in this house where my children slept. The reality of who Dante was crashed over me with new weight. Not the controlled danger I'd glimpsed, but real, bloody consequences of whatever business kept men like Marco on his payroll. Time crawled. Lily and Noah eventually dozed against me, exhausted by fear they didn't fully understand. Alessandro stayed awake, his eyes fixed on the door like he expected it to burst open any moment. I stroked his hair and tried to project a calm I didn't feel, every nerve screaming with the need to know what was happening, whether Dante was hurt, whether we were truly safe or just waiting for violence to find us. It was past midnight when the soft knock came. I tensed, pulling the children closer. "Emma." Dante's voice, rough and strained. "It's me. Open the door." I hesitated, some instinct warning me that whatever waited on the other side would change everything. But Alessandro was already scrambling off the bed, his small hands fumbling with the lock. The door swung open to reveal Dante leaning against the frame like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Blood stained his white shirt, dark and spreading across his left side. His face was too pale, his usual control stripped away by pain, and something that looked like fury barely contained. Marco stood behind him, one hand hovering near Dante's shoulder, ready to catch him if he fell. "Madre di Dio," Alessandro breathed, frozen in the doorway. "It's nothing." Dante's jaw was so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Just a graze." Marco's being dramatic. "You need stitches," Marco said flatly. "Teresa's preparing the—" Not in front of the children. Dante's eyes found mine over Alessandro's head, and what I saw there made my chest constrict. Fear. Real, genuine fear that had nothing to do with physical pain. "Emma, please." I didn't think. Didn't calculate the risk or weigh my options. I simply moved, ushering the children back to bed with promises I wasn't sure I could keep, then following Dante and Marco down to what turned out to be a medical room on the second floor. Of course, this house had a medical room. Of course, Dante Caruso was prepared for injuries that couldn't go to hospitals without raising questions. Teresa was already there, medical supplies laid out with practiced efficiency. She took one look at Dante and gestured to the examination table. "Sit, and for once in your life, don't argue with me." He obeyed, which scared me more than the blood. Dante Caruso didn't obey anyone. "Emma, you should go," he said, as Teresa cut away his ruined shirt, revealing the wound. A bullet grazed across his ribs, long but not deep. "You don't need to see this. Probably not." I moved to his other side, opposite Teresa, my hands surprisingly steady, but I'm staying anyway. His eyes met mine, something unreadable flickering in their depths. Then he nodded once, that simple gesture somehow feeling like acceptance of more than just my presence in this room. Teresa worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times, cleaning and stitching while Dante sat stone still. His jaw clenched against pain he refused to vocalize. I found myself reaching for his hand without thinking, offering silent support. His fingers closed around mine with crushing strength, using me as an anchor against the agony. "What happened?" I asked quietly. "Business dispute." The answer came through gritted teeth. "Someone decided the terms of our agreement were negotiable. They were wrong." "Are they dead?" "Not yet." Something dark passed over his features. "But they will be. No one threatens my family and lives to regret it." Family. The word echoed in my head. When had we become his family? Teresa finished the last stitch and stepped back, surveying her work with a critical eye. "No strenuous activity for at least a week. And I mean it, Dante. None of your usual nonsense about being fine. You're not fine. You're lucky this wasn't 3 inches to the right. Luck had nothing to do with it." He released my hand slowly, like letting go required effort. "I was careful. You were reckless." Teresa began cleaning up, her movements sharp with worry. "Going to that meeting alone, without enough backup. I had Marco. One guard isn't enough. You know better." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Get him upstairs. Make sure he actually rests. He'll listen to you." "He barely knows me," I protested. "Why would he?" "Because you're the only person in this house he's tried to impress in 5 years. Teresa's smile was sad and knowing. "Trust me. He'll listen." She left, taking Marco with her, leaving me alone with Dante in the antiseptic-scented room. He sat on the edge of the examination table, his bare torso wrapped in white bandages that were already showing spots of red, his dark hair falling across his forehead. He looked younger like this, more human, more breakable. "You should hate me." The words came quiet, almost wondering. "You should take your children and run from this house as fast as you can." "Probably," I agreed, moving to stand in front of him. "But I'm not very good at doing what I should." "Emma." My name sounded like a prayer and a curse. "You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into, what I am, what I do." "I understand enough." I reached up, surprising myself, pushing that errant lock of hair back from his forehead. "I understand you saved my children and me when you had no reason to. I understand you care about Sandro more than anything. I understand you're dangerous and probably a criminal and definitely not someone I should trust." My hand lingered against his temple, feeling his pulse jump beneath my fingers. "And I understand that despite all of that, I feel safer with you than I ever did with Marcus." His hand caught my wrist, holding it against his face like he was memorizing the touch. "You shouldn't. I'm not safe, Emma. I'm the opposite of safe. Maybe I'm tired of safe." The confession escaped before I could stop it. Safe got me an unfaithful husband and a pile of debt. Safe left me crying in a parking garage with nowhere to go. "You're dangerous. But you're also here. You're also real. And you're also bleeding because someone tried to hurt you. Probably because of the life you live protecting people like me, not people like you." He pulled me closer, until I was standing between his legs, his free hand settling on my hip with possessive certainty. "Just you. Only you and the children, and Sandro. Everyone else can burn." The intensity in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it ignited something I'd thought Marcus had killed years ago. Desire. Fierce and reckless and completely inappropriate given the circumstances. "Dante," I started. But he pulled me down, his lips capturing mine in a kiss that tasted like blood and desperation, and promises neither of us should make. I kissed him back. God help me. I kissed him back like I was drowning, and he was air, my hands fisting in his hair, my body pressing against his despite the wound, despite the wrongness of wanting a man who'd bought my debt and installed me in his house like a possession. His arm wrapped around my waist, holding me to him with a strength that belied his injury, his mouth moving against mine with bruising intensity. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "Probably the biggest one I've ever made. I couldn't seem to make myself move away. And I've made some pretty spectacular mistakes. I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you a normal life. I can barely promise I'll survive the enemies I've made." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing across my kiss-swollen lips. "But I can promise that as long as I'm breathing, Nothing will touch you or those children. You're mine now, Emma. And I protect what's mine with everything I am. Even if protecting me means destroying yourself, especially then." He kissed me again, softer this time, almost reverent. "I told you in the parking garage. Your instincts led you to me. Maybe pay attention to where they're leading you now." I thought about the past 3 weeks, about Alessandro's tentative smiles and Lily's newfound confidence, and Noah's peaceful sleep, about dinners at that massive table, feeling for the first time like I belonged somewhere, about Dante's constant presence, the way he noticed everything, the way his eyes followed me through rooms like I was something precious he couldn't risk losing. "Where are they leading me?" I asked. "To me. Simple. Absolute. Terrifying. If you're brave enough to follow." I looked at this man, this dangerous, damaged, devoted man who'd claimed my debt and then claimed me, who put guards on my children and flowers in my room, who killed people and stitched orphans into his life with the same ruthless efficiency, who looked at me like I was salvation and damnation wrapped in one impossible package. I should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, kept this arrangement professional, protected my heart from a man who could destroy it as easily as he destroyed his enemies. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "I'm brave enough." His smile was beautiful and terrible, transforming his face into something almost holy. "Then we're both damned." "Probably." I kissed him again, sealing whatever bargain we just made. "But at least we'll be damned together." The weeks that followed felt like falling and flying simultaneously. Dante healed, though not as quickly as his stubborn nature demanded. I learned the true scope of his business. Import, export, was technically accurate, though the imports often came with prices paid in blood rather than currency. I learned about the families he dealt with, the alliances and rivalries that shaped his world. I learned that the man the outside world feared was the same man who read bedtime stories to Sandro in Italian, who taught Lily to play chess with infinite patience, who carried Noah on his shoulders through the garden on Sunday mornings. I learned that loving Dante Caruso was inevitable as gravity and twice as dangerous. The debt still existed, documented in a contract locked in his office safe, but neither of us mentioned it anymore. It had become irrelevant, a fiction we'd maintained long enough to justify what was really happening, that I'd stopped being his employee and become something else entirely. His partner, his lover, the mother to the children he'd collected, biological and otherwise. Alessandro called me Mama 3 months after I arrived. He said it casually, asking me to pass the salt at dinner, like the word hadn't just detonated in my chest. Dante's eyes met mine across the table, and I saw my own emotions reflected there, joy and fear, and the weight of responsibility we'd both chosen to carry. 6 months in, Dante proposed in that same library where we'd spent so many evenings. No ring, no ceremony, just a quiet question asked while the children slept upstairs and the house settled into its nightly rhythms. "Marry me, not because of the debt, not because of obligation, but because I've been yours since the moment I saw you crying in that parking garage, and I want the world to know it." I said yes. Of course I said yes. We married quietly in the garden, with Teresa and Marco as witnesses, and the children throwing rose petals with enthusiastic abandon. The priest who performed the ceremony didn't ask questions about Dante's business, just blessed our union, and looked the other way from the obvious danger radiating from every corner of the property. That night, after the children were asleep and the guards had taken their posts, Dante pulled me into his office. He unlocked the safe and removed that contract, the one that had bound me to him through debt and desperation. Without a word, he fed it into the fireplace, watching the pages curl and blacken. "You're free," he said simply. "You've always been free. The debt was an excuse to keep you here until you chose to stay on your own." I watched the contract burn, understanding finally what I'd really signed that day on the plane. Not an employment agreement, a dowry, a bride price paid by my own hand, binding myself to this man through choices disguised as obligations. I would have stayed anyway, I told him, moving into his arms. Even without the debt, even without the contract, I know. He held me tight, his face buried in my hair. But you needed the cage to feel safe enough to realize you wanted to stay. I gave you bars made of gold until you understood you could bend them anytime you chose. And now? Now the cage is gone. You're here because you want to be, because you choose me. Choose us. Choose this life despite everything it costs. His lips found mine in the firelight. And I choose you right back, every single day, for the rest of our lives. Outside, Boston glittered through the windows, a city full of people who would never understand the strange alchemy that had transformed a parking garage breakdown into this. A family built from broken pieces and desperation, held together by a dangerous man's capacity for devotion and a desperate woman's courage to trust again. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. Messier and more real, stained with blood and bound by choices that came with consequences we'd spend lifetimes navigating. But it was ours. And in Dante's arms, with our children sleeping peacefully upstairs and guards stationed at every entrance, I finally understood what freedom really meant. Not the absence of constraints, but the presence of someone who would burn the world to keep you safe, and the courage to let them. The debt was paid in full, not with money or time or service, but with something far more valuable: trust given freely, love chosen deliberately, and a future built on the ruins of everything we'd both lost. We were home,